at her twice, but every available man in the community noticed Noreen. "Who is he?" Noreen pressed. Charity frowned. Talk about nosy. Then again, Noreen would get her answer anyway when he showed up. If he showed up. Perishing the thought, she smiled. "My date," she said with a touch of triumph, "is Jesse Bontrager." Noreen snickered. "Nee." "Ja," Charity emphasized with a terse nod. "Jesse's going out with you." She pressed her lips together and glanced down at the white laminate tabletop. Although she wanted to, she couldn't blame Noreen's skepticism. When Nelson had pulled her aside after church last Sunday and told her Jesse wanted to meet her for a lunch date, she almost keeled over from shock. Next to Ezra, Jesse was the most handsome of the 11 Bontrager brothers. Actually, there were only 3 to compare, since the older ones were married, and other than Ezra, who was also taken, Nelson was the only age-appropriate Bontrager. Nevertheless, tall, wiry, curly-headed Jesse was cute, even if she'd only seen him from afar. But lately the men in Birch Creek seemed to run in the opposite direction whenever she showed up, so she found it hard to believe anyone, including Jesse, was suddenly interested in her. But when she asked Nelson to repeat himself, he said the D word again. Date. "He's too shy to ask," Nelson said, "so I'm asking for him." Jesse had never struck her as shy. Then again, she'd been so enamored with Ezra, and once he was unavailable, she'd set her sights on Nelson, that she hadn't paid much attention to Jesse. She'd even hoped that Nelson was going to ask her out, making Jesse's invitation more astonishing. She wasn't disappointed, though. A date was a date. She'd never had one before, and the prospect of a date was what her dwindling hope and diminishing morale needed. One date, and she could prove herself. One date, and she could show everyone she was worthy. She shifted her chin. "Yeah, I have a date with Jesse, and he'll be here any second, so we'll order after he arrives." Noreen's laughter faded. "You're joking, yeah?" "You don't believe me?" She shook her head. "No one has been able to convince Jesse to date. Believe me, I've tried." "I guess you're not his type, then." The last sliver of humor disappeared from Noreen's eyes. "You think you are?" "He's meeting me here, not you." Noreen glanced around the diner. "I don't see him, and you've been waiting for almost 20 minutes. "He'll be here. You'll see." "Everyone will." She rolled her eyes. "Let me know when you want some food. We're busy, and you're taking up a table." She spun around and walked away. Phooey. Charity slumped. Ever since Noreen had arrived in Birch Creek and moved into the room across the hall from her at Stoll's Inn, life had been miserable. Okay, her life had been miserable before Noreen moved in, but it was simpler to pin her disappointment and aggravation on someone else, and Noreen made it easy. Why was she interested in Jesse anyway? It wasn't as if she were lacking male attention, including Nelson's. Right before he'd talked to her about Jesse, Charity noticed Nelson couldn't keep his eyes off Noreen. And why had she noticed? Because she couldn't keep her eyes off him. Nelson was what, the 3rd or was it 4th Bontrager she'd tried to pursue? Some more fervently than others. There was Ezra, who was now with Catherine Miller. Before him was Owen, although he never seemed to get the message and ended up marrying someone else. When Ezra had rejected her, she planned to move on to Nelson. And that didn't even count the 4 men she'd targeted as prospects who weren't Bontragers. 3 of them were considerate when they declined her interest, but one wasn't. He called her weird and a pest. He wasn't the first one to throw those awful adjectives at her. That honor was reserved for her mother. She'd been the one to give her the ad in the first place, practically shoving Charity on a bus to Birch Creek the next day. At first, Charity was glad for the chance to prove she wasn't Wholesome, but after living in Birch Creek for almost a year, she was wondering if Mom was right, that she was a square peg in a round hole that wouldn't fit in anywhere or with anyone. Her throat burned. Don't let anyone see you cry. Mom had imparted that nugget of wisdom. More like hit me over the head with it. Mom wasn't even her biological mother, but her stepmother, who insisted Charity call her Mom since she and her father had married when Charity was 8 years old, after her grandmother passed away. Grandmother had never called her Wholesome. She crossed her arms and looked at the clock again. Almost 25 minutes late. There was no